Glad to have everybody with us today on this, now what are we? The fifth Sunday of Easter, right? And which is amazing when you think about that there's 7 Sundays in Easter, but that we're already through all of Lent. We've we're about to be through Easter too, which pushes us right up against the edge of Pentecost, and then takes you into the summer, which is what we call. Well, my friends dislike this one, but ordinary time. And ordinary time is the longest swath of the church calendar year. There are like 32 or 33 Sundays of ordinary time, and that's when you go to green stoles, which is my least favorite color, and of the stoles. So, but it's the longest one. But that as we're in Easter, where you continue going towards Ascension and Pentecost, and then also you have to take into consideration there's another layer of calendar when it comes time for the church as well. It's not just the overall church calendar that you have; it's the local church calendar as well, which has certain events that are really important to that particular church, as we call them in the Book of Order, the particular church, which is the local church. Hi, how's it going? Yeah, sure. And speaking of busy, as far as that, that's what we're talking about. The particular church here has the May meeting, which is a long part of the history, gathering together of people. Other churches, I would say, wouldn't you say it's fair to say this is somewhat like homecoming for other churches, which has its own history as a matter of fact, in that there's a connectedness that meetings like May meeting brings about, that used to have a deeper rooted tradition than even probably more so now. But it's still nice to keep in touch with that. But in the same way, the passage we had a couple of weeks ago, was it last week or the week before? Last week. Um, the notion of how the church gathers around the Word, the church gathers for fellowship, the church breaks bread together, the church breaks bread together, and and then adds to the numbers. So that's kind of this day is kind of really the personification of that kind of notion. We hear Scripture today, we break bread, and we fellowship all in place. Also, one more added layer to that today is we tried something again different. Always looking for the place where you have confirmation to be a part of worship, and so we're doing that today too. So we have the confirmation class joining the church and being a part of that. So one more layer of kind of tradition of the larger church and the local church all together. And that is kind of why we picked this passage from 1 Peter chapter 2 instead of the gospel lesson, because, how many times do you get sermons from, 1st or 2nd Peter? So we'll talk about that part as well. Now, the overall general notion and of 1 Peter. Anybody, like, you just sit around the house and go, ooh, I think I'm going to read from 1 Peter today or 2 Peter? No? Okay, that's fine. Here is the intro to chapter 1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, in Bithynia, who have been chosen and destined by God, the Father, and sanctioned by the Spirit to be obedient to Jesus Christ and to be sprinkled with his blood. May grace and peace be yours in abundance. So the very first kind of notion here gives you the indication that maybe who the author might be, and we'll get to that, but to the exiles of the dispersion. Wow. Now, there's an introduction, right? Um, you get the idea here that these people aren't exactly, I mean, they're the dispersed, they're the diaspora, they're kind of in exile. Um, so, what is going on here? And this book is kind of hard to place. First of all, it is probably it is the most sophisticated Greek in the New Testament. When I think back to the days of undergraduate Greek, when we were taking it, and we were in the second semester of the third year of it. You had to take, it was one Greek class consisted of a whole year, and then Greek 2 consisted of a whole year, and Greek 3 consisted of a whole year. So we went from like 25 students down to two of us in the second semester of the third year. And so this is hard Greek. This is really, really, really hard. And so, thus, most people would assume that maybe a fisherman from Palestine didn't write this book, okay? Not casting any negatives on people who fish, but it is a much later kind of writing. So it was probably written from Rome, probably written to some people who were outside of Rome, written to some Gentiles who were Christians who had who were starting to see some persecution, which there wasn't a whole lot of persecution until later in the first century, and it was sporadic there, at that. So these are the kind of the exiles, the kind of people that we're talking about, the diaspora, the people who kind of feel out of place in this world because of their Christian faith, and they're put at odds with the world around them. And so the writer is trying to say to them in this piece, a part of it, well, this is kind of what being a Christian calls you to do and what it calls you to be. And so we'll hit this and listen to all the images. There are a lot of images that connect to the Old Testament, or what we call the Old Testament. And, just kind of think about some of those other aspects. And I may read verse 11 just for fun, too. Though it has nothing to do with the sermon today. Here we go. Chapter 2, 1 Peter chapter 2. Rid yourselves, therefore, of all malice and all guile, insincerity, envy, and all slander. And this is where we pick up. Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, so that by in it you may grow into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. Come to him, a living stone, though rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For it stands in Scripture, see, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone, chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. To you, then, who believe, he is precious. For those who do not believe, the stone that the builders rejected has become the very head of the corner, and a stone that makes them stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the word, as they were destined to do. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And now here's the extra verse, just for fun. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and exiles to abstain from the desires of the flesh that wage war against the soul. And include that one because of the notion of aliens. They're seen as the church ethics guy at Duke way back when made this a real popular statement. He wrote a book called Resident Aliens, Stanley Hauerwas, and in religious circles it became a really big selling book. I'm sure in the world of you know bookstores it probably didn't sell near the copies that other things would sell, but in our world, especially since he was one of our professors, resident aliens became a huge term that we used a lot to talk about what it meant to be Christians in the world. And I think it's probably a great image. He loved the image a lot, a whole lot. But the notion of that these people, this diaspora, these exiles, are resident aliens. They live here, they just don't belong here. And that's what Jesus kind of said in John. He said, we're in this world, we're just not of this world. And so the struggle that these folks go through, and the struggle, I think, in trajectory of what we go through, of what it means to be Christians in the world today, is a great discussion point of what it means to be a resident alien and how you understand what it means to live out the Christian faith in a world where that might bump up against those around us. It's kind of a great conversation, I think. Okay, now back to the passage. Is that familiar? You're okay. Feels that I'm not sure what that is. That's kind of a yes, it is, but no, it's not. Oh, the laugh is a royal priesthood, holy. Yeah, okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Um, right. I love. I have to say, I'm I do try to dodge the King James as much as I can, and I love NRSV, but I do love the part in this passage where it says, "You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people." Uh, the King James version says you're a peculiar people. Okay, you're peculiar. I kind of think that's a neat way. Yeah, it's not the right translation, um, but I do think it kind of sets the image of what the writer is trying to do here. He's trying to say this this call, this and notice in here he uses words like destined, that comes from the word predestined, and the notion of chosen, which is the English term for the word elect here, that he's using a lot of that terminology for these folks. That, this isn't, I mean, this is you are chosen by God. You are destined to this. And so that kind of brings in a whole other conversation, too, about just how overriding God's providence is in this, from where this writer is coming from. Mm, 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 mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, right. Right. There is a very high call in what he is calling for the church to be. That's right. When you say you're a royal priesthood, and you're right. These images, there are so many images here that are from what we call the Old Testament. Just looking back from them, indeed. Let's see. You have tasted that the Lord is good. From some, taste and see that the Lord is good. That's that's an image that comes straight. The whole cornerstone rejected that Old Testament, what we call Old Testament notion. I mean, he's drawing these images, the notion of being chosen, elect. That's he's drawing these people, if they are outsiders, Gentiles like us, into this, and he's saying, you are, because of Jesus Christ, you are a part of this. And you're right. He is saying too here that there is no separation of priesthood or laity, or clergy and laity. It's kind of the Reformed tradition. Remember, we talk about the priesthood of all believers. Kadang, here we are. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, the cornerstone. Jesus is the cornerstone. He is the one. It's everything. It's this. This is a great image here that Jesus is this cornerstone, and the foundation of what we're building the church on. Except this building is the people are the stones. Did you pick up on that part? The people are the stones that I know. I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. It's not the building. You know. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cornerstone has to be, or the rest of it. Yeah, right. We're the rest of the stones. That's right. And good point. Good point. Very good point. And that is a great part of that the notion that Jesus is cornerstone, and the cornerstone has to be solid. It has to be. Without that, the rest of the building gets shaky. And then yes, the other stones are not necessarily perfect, and that's important too, I think, because then it says more about the cornerstone, Jesus, than it says about the rest of the stone. That when people go, I don't know if y'all hear this or not from other people, but I get to hear this line, and I want to go, would you come up with an original line, please? After all these years of being a pastor, people go, well, when I get my act together, I'm going to come back to church. And I would go, oh, okay, so you mean never, you know? So, and as I get older, I guess I'm going to start saying that like out loud and not thinking it. And so, but it's just like this, how we've kind of really misconstrued what it means to be the church, that, oh, I have to get myself together first before I get to come. And the point is, you don't get yourself together. The good news is what Paul told Rome in the book of Romans is, yeah, we're all a bunch of, sinners. None of us get off here. The good news is that we all deserve damnation. That's the good news. Wait, that's not such good news. But Jesus, the cornerstone, that's the perfect one, not the perfect other stones. Now we go, oh, yeah. Oh, that church, you're a bunch of hypocrites. I don't want to go over there and be a part of you guys. Like, well, that's the point. That's the point. That the cornerstone is Jesus. This whole call out, we're not a holy nation. We're not God's own people because we got ourselves together. We're a part of this because Jesus says you can't get yourself together. That's where I come in. And yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. There's this list at the door that, oh, you don't meet the checklist, so I'm sorry, come back later, try again. Yeah, that's a disco or a nightclub, where the intro. But this is a whole different thing. So I like that part of the image, that here we are in this place, these people who who are kind of outsiders, and they're the diaspora, the spread out, the exiles, who are kind of feeling displaced. And he's saying, you weren't a people before, but now, because of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, you are a people. You are connected. You are something. And so that's kind of this beautiful picture. And I'm, I did do electrical work for a while, and so I do understand some construction things. I do understand when they would put up the walls and they would say, "Okay, it's your turn now, guy. You go do this. You do your part, and then we'll come finish the rest." And so you do have to have this foundation, this kind of solid footing to build the church. And it's a beautiful image. All of these images, and I love this too. This is where I start thinking about my retired educator wife who says, there's different forms of learning and there's different kind of images. So just look at every image he tossed out for us today, just in this short, basically 10 verses. Hey, if you want to be the church, you've got to, you're a stone, that you're a part of this bigger building. So so those people who visualize that, how you build a building, you go, oh, I can see that. I can see how I'm a part of that. It's not that building that's the church. It's us, and we're supposed to fit together and be, cemented together and, solid, fit into pieces by Christ as the cornerstone, the one that other people rejected. And the reason they reject him is because they don't obey the word. They trip over him. They stumble over him because he's a problem. He can be a problem because he says crazy things like, pray for your enemy and, love those who hate you and show mercy when no one shows you mercy and that kind of thing. And people go, ooh, that's no good. And they stumble over those kind of things. But he's saying for those of you who fit into this, who connect to this, who believe that through him, you're a part. You fit into this building. Or he uses another image in case that one doesn't. I don't really know much about buildings, so I don't really get that. He said, you're a royal priesthood, a chosen race, a holy nation. Maybe some of these others, you were in darkness, now you're in light. You weren't a people, now you are a people. So if you feel like you're lost and lonely or apart, you go, ooh, I kind of like that. Now I am something. So he throws out all these different images for all these different people to kind of connect to and go, okay, we get it. Or at least hope so. Right. Right. This past week, what did we hear from the Surgeon General? We have an epidemic in this country. It's no longer COVID. That's over because the world, all of them said it's no longer an issue. Huh, that's interesting. But we have an epidemic of loneliness that it really, really affects people and how they feel so apart from each other, and how it affects 15 to 24-year-olds the most. We've suddenly become this people that talk to each other or see each other, on a little screen, right? Yeah, and that they feel very much apart from everybody, and that we're even calling it an epidemic. Yeah. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. Sure. Mm-hmm. Right, right. As others, yeah. No. And so how is it that then, since we are just, we 6 minutes left, we can jump into that. So then what does this look like for us as the church, especially over against that backdrop? There's a couple of things I would say. I would just want to say first is that The one thing is that people in our country, and even Christians, keep trying to make us a Christian nation. And I would kind of argue over against that, even against history, against who we said founded our country. Number one, that the more we try to kind of make it a place of comfort for us as Christians, the more and more we're going to bump our heads up against a wall. That in this notion, it, we're resident aliens. We are at odds with a lot of things. Our faith drives us to be something very different. And that does kind of say sometimes, well, everybody else sitting on the same level or same place. We're not that we're better or anything like that, but it's just that when you follow Jesus, he's saying, other people are going to trip over me and stumble. So our issue is more about how do we live faithfully. And so that's one thing. So then how do you butt up against that loneliness part, especially, well, for any ages, not just 15 to 24, but any age, that we're saying we weren't a people before. And you look around the room today, and there's all different kind of folks in this room. There's all, I mean, when you look around today, or when we're breaking bread or when we're breaking bread here or out there, or we weren't a people, but Jesus says that cornerstone, that's the perfect rock, and all of us unperfect rocks that are filling in around him, that what does that look like for us in this world in which we are living, where we might be considered resident aliens too? Is that a right question? Is that a good question? I'm not sure. Okay. She says it's a good question. It's okay then. There you go. So what does that look like for us here? Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 Right. 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 Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Made it hard. Mm. Right. Yeah. Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So it is our call to kind of reconnect in that way. Maybe it won't be exactly the same, too. I guess we have to recognize that. Um, right. Yeah. 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 Uh-huh. Oh, ooh, that's a good image too. That once the cornerstone is set, holds the rest of us up. And and and, and maybe that's a part of the problem too. That and I know, and I really open myself up here to ridicule, but that we try to do a lot of things on our own and depend on ourselves, as opposed to this really is Christ's church. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. 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 Right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Right. That all the many different talents based on that cornerstone, which is a great image, and now I'm gonna have to think about that a lot more. But that everybody kind of fits in. Rocks are all different kind of shapes, sizes, all those kind of things, and we all kind of fit into different places, um, that fit together to build the building. Um, hmm. Yeah. 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 It's super good. Yeah. Everybody, yeah. Everybody's got their place to fit. Ooh, we're another brick in the wall. I did not come up with that. No. Have to get rid of that's Pink Floyd. Okay, sorry. Yeah, to fit into the wall, right. There you go. Okay, super good. Okay, we're going to have a good day because we are going to break bread around this table, and we are in bread. Uh, but this and we but and we're going to have outside and the confirmation class too, and how they fit into this discussion and story as we go forward. And good. Let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for the cornerstone, for Jesus who sets the foundation for us all, that we might rest on him, each and every one of us, destined, called, elect, chosen to be your people, a peculiar people to proclaim your goodness and your light in the darkness.